In a way, styling is even more important in a motorcycle than it is in a car. In a motorcycle, there are no windows or roof to hide from. You are completely exposed to the elements and to the gaze of others. When a rider gets on his or her bike, he or she becomes part of its silhouette, and vice versa. So the bike has to complement the rider's aesthetics. So when a bike focuses almost entirely on style, it is completely understandable. I think a lot of classic bikes are like that. They don't get as many features as adventure bikes or sport tourers. A lot of times they're not as comfortable. A lot of times they're not as fast. A lot of times the focus is almost entirely on style. And I think that's perfectly okay. If there's one thing though that I would not like classic bikes to completely ignore, it is safety. So for those who like the look of retro bikes, but don't like having to sacrifice important stuff like, safety, there is the R9T. Now this comes loaded with a lot of advanced safety features. It has cornering ABS, it has adaptive, lean sensitive headlamps. You get a steering damper. It gets traction control, you get multiple driving modes, you get an immobilizer, and this also has cruise control. But it also has these retro analog gauges. You don't get any push start buttons, and you don't even get a fuel gauge. So it's a mishmash of modern and retro, and I think it works really well on the R9T. BMW launched the R9T back in 2014, and very little has changed since then visually. It's a retro-styled roadster that's supposed to serve as a blank canvas to custom builders and enthusiasts. It comes in different configurations. This one right here is called the Option 719, and it comes with visual accents that differentiate it from the other variants.
For those who like looking at detail, there is plenty here for your eyes to absorb. The tank has this brushed aluminum finish. You get 719 decals all over it. You get 90 stamped on the air intake over here.
I like this little cowl that it has at the back. It limits the number of riders to 1, but it makes the bike look more balanced. It looks like it has a bit more meat at the back. The tubular frame is partly painted in red. The engine looks like a piece of retro futuristic sculpture. The way it sticks out of the frame with BMW logos on each side. It's like it's saying, I'm a boxer engine. I'm wide, get out of my way.
The R9T comes with a 1170cc air-cooled dual overhead cam boxer engine. Now if you don't know, a boxer engine has its cylinders opposed to each other. So you have one cylinder over here and the other one on the other side. So that gives the bike a really wide look because they stick out like 6 inches from the frame of the bike. At the front it gets an inverted telescopic fork. Like I said, you have a steering damper which should help prevent death wobbles.
Brakes at the front are dual 320mm discs with 4-piston Brembo calipers.
You have these spoked wheels wrapped in 120/70 Metzeler tires at the front. Here at the back it also gets 17-inch wheels. The tires are much wider at 170/70s.
Stopping force at the back is provided by a single 265mm disc with a 2-piston floating caliper. It comes with a single-sided paddle lever suspension at the back.
Now, if you look down here, you would not see any chains because this is propeller shaft driven. And one obvious advantage of that is that you don't have any chains to maintain. So even if you drive over dirty roads, you don't have to clean your chain as often, or you don't have to clean it at all because you don't have a chain. Yeah, so it looks like a big bike in photos, but it's actually not very tall and it's not very long. It is very wide because of the boxer engine. The seat height is just 805mm. I am 5'8" and I can flat-foot it. So that's my seating situation right now. I'm flat-footed on both feet. The handlebars are not very low. That's my seating position right there, and it is pretty comfortable. So one thing about laterally mounted engines is that when you start the engine,
The body of the bike does sway to the right. Also, when you rev the engine, it happens. Now that's not really a problem when you're riding. You can easily compensate for it with your balance. Yeah, what else are we missing? That's it. Yeah, it's a gorgeous looking bike. Oh, by the way, this has an Akrapovic exhaust stock from the factory.
R9T is surprisingly easy to ride. I would even go as far as to say that it's something that a beginner could easily get into. It's relatively low, so you can put your feet down when you have to. It's heavy, but because the center of gravity is so low, you don't feel it so much when you're moving, or even when you're at a standstill. It's even easy to maneuver in parking lots, at least compared to other big bikes that I've been on. The 1.2-liter engine may seem intimidating on paper, but it's actually very forgiving in the sense that there's not a lot of torque down low. Coming from the R1250GS, which also has a boxer engine of a similar displacement, this feels a lot less torquey down low. It also feels a bit less smooth. At about 3,000 RPM, there is a bit of vibration that can be felt through the handlebars and seen through the gauges. I mean, they do vibrate quite a bit, but it's nothing that's too excessive, and it's something that I guess should be expected and maybe even considered desirable in a classic bike. It gets 2 gauges with a gear indicator, which I believe you don't get on some of the lower variants. You don't get a fuel gauge though, so that's something that you will definitely have to get used to. Also, one thing that makes it easier to ride in traffic is that it doesn't get that hot. Because it doesn't have a fan at the front, hot air doesn't get blown into your legs, so in stop-and-go traffic, it's surprisingly usable. Now at higher speeds, because there is no windshield, there's quite a bit of wind that'll hit your helmet, but I think that's something that you can fix with an aftermarket windshield. The seating position is ideal for cruising in the city or on the highway. You just have enough forward lean so it still feels a bit sporty, but not enough lean to make your wrists hurt in stop-and-go traffic.
Of all the BMW bikes that I've been on, I think this is one of the easiest to ride. Surprisingly, the width of the bike does not bother me as much as I thought it would. Yeah, the lack of a fuel tank is something that you'll have to get used to. So surprisingly, you can get a pretty good estimate of how much fuel you have by shaking the bike left and right. Yeah, it's surprisingly easy to ride. It feels light when it's moving, and even when it's not moving, it doesn't feel as comfortable or as refined as the GS for sure, but that's the point of the bike. It's supposed to vibrate, it's supposed to feel retro in some aspects. But I like the fact that they didn't go retro on the safety of the bike.
The R9T comes in multiple variants. Prices start at 1,065,000 pesos for the base model. This option, 719, sells for 1,385,000 pesos. I think the R9T is a gorgeous looking bike. It looks classic, with a very subtle touch of modernity and a sprinkling of sportiness. I'd say it's one of the best looking out there for the money. And even if its looks and the BMW badge are the only things that it has going for it, it still makes you drool. And others as well. It's a very desirable bike. But it's also comfortable, it's easy to ride, it's loaded with safety features, and it has power. And that makes it easy to recommend to those who are into classics, who don't mind footing the bill.